This is Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Hey, buddy, welcome to this episode of Teaching to the Test Pattern. I'm Tom White, and this is part 2 of my conversation with Paul Terpstra from Klover Products. And Klover Products, again, focuses on the audio industry. They have some other stuff there, but we're going to focus on their parabolic microphones in this series. Today, we're going to talk about the difference in parabolic microphones and shotgun microphones. We're going to talk about, a couple of issues that I had with the parabolic, and to say it's an issue is kind of a misnomer. It's a personal thing, and you'll understand that when you're done listening to this. I don't know why I'm in video mode. I know why I'm in video mode right now. I've been editing a lot today of video stuff. So while you're listening to this, you'll understand what I mean by there's a personal issue with I have the Sound Shark, which is their consumer line of the parabolic microphone, and you'll hear the issue that I have. It's a dumb issue to have. I admit it. It's not something I ever would have thought of before owning one, but you'll understand. So listen to that. Also, while you're listening to things, listen to me when I tell you that if you're trying to take your program or your business or whatever it is whatever reason that you're listening to this podcast, if you're trying to go to the next level, Amatrace, AMITRACE.com. They're going to help you get there. I use TriCaster. When I have a question about TriCaster, I call Amatrace. When people call me and say, hey, I need training on a TriCaster, I call Amatrace. So people go, hey, you talk great about your TriCaster and NDI and all that stuff. I send them to Amatrace. They're like the gold standard for TriCaster in the Southeast. They can take care of you. All you got to do is call them or go to their website. I would suggest going to their website since you're listening to this and you can't stop listening to this and call them, but you can continue listening to this and go to the website. AMITRACE.com. Family-owned business, 30 years. I can't brag enough about them. They're awesome. AMITRACE.com. And while you're doing that, here's part 2 of my conversation with Paul Terpstra from Klover Products.
Teaching to the Test Pattern.
See, the only thing I ever think of is sports. I mean, and you and I were talking the other day about just obviously in the situation with COVID and separation and social distancing, and you sent me a pretty good idea, which I think beyond this is pretty powerful. As teachers, one of the hard things that we struggle with is turning things quickly, helping kids turn things quickly, and then you run into lavaliers with wireless frequencies and all of that. Give us a little bit on kind of what your suggestion on how to use parabolics in this time is.
Well, we've had quite a few customers that have used our smallest parabolic for like man on the street interviews, or they're doing a documentary about the homeless people on the streets of, New York City or whatever. They really don't feel comfortable with putting a mic wire down the shirt of this homeless guy, on the street. So with the little parabolic attached to your camera, you can walk up. If you can get within 6 feet or so, you'll get a really reasonable audio signal. And, you don't have to worry about getting close enough and putting your hands on somebody. One of the funny stories is one of the guys that I worked with mentioned he did work for the Army. And he said that poor little, private has to go up to the 4-star general and ask him to run a wire down his shirt, let alone the male-female, thing. Just wanting running a wire down somebody's shirt to hide a microphone is a real awkward situation. Then you've got the rubbing, of the cloth, your shirt versus the lapel, batteries die. There's, lavaliers are great. I don't think they'll ever go away, but they do have their challenges, but people are just so used to it. They don't really think about it, or they, don't think that there's an alternative. So just being able to throw a little parabolic on top of your camera and walk up to somebody and do an interview opens a lot of opportunities, especially now when you don't want to be handing a microphone from person to person or back and forth, or again, touching somebody to put a wire down their shirt.
Yeah, I had never thought of that until you sent me that. We were talking about it, and you sent me the email about how easy that would be. I mean, there are times where we're at an event trying to interview as many, let's say it's 8th grade night. We're trying to interview as many parents as we can, where we spent, okay, we'll put this here. Now let's listen. Okay, can we hide it? I'd never thought about putting it on the camera and just rocking and rolling through that and going. So that's something that definitely I've taken away with it, that we're going to, I use it a lot now. I can't wait to see what I do when we finally get back to school.
There's actually a customer of ours out in California that, I don't know if this is a thing where you are, but in California, on top of getting senior pictures, the seniors will have a little video made. They get in front of the camera for 60 seconds and say, hi, I'm Susie, I'm on the volleyball team and senior class president, yada, yada, yada. Well, this photographer was doing, hundreds, literally, of kids, one after another, and to have to spend the time, of taking the mic off of one kid, putting it on the next, worried about not being seen, not rubbing on the cloth and all that. And he put one of our little parabolics on basically a light stand, 3 or 4 foot over their heads. And by locating it properly, even though the gym was full of other kids yapping, you would still get workable audio of the kid that was in front of the camera. So he thought it was, just fantastic.
So for the teacher out there who goes, wait, I can already do this. I have a shotgun. Tell me why a parabolic is better.
Well, I guess my response to that is take your shotgun and go out and do some real experiments on how far off center or how much other noise your shotgun is capturing besides what's in front of your camera. People like to think that shotgun microphones are more like a rifle than a shotgun, but in our tests and most of the trade shows that we go to, we'll demonstrate that you can be, depending on the quality of your shotgun, you can be 80 degrees off center and still capture someone speaking. Or if you're at a sporting event, the parent next to you yelling and screaming at his kid is going to be picked up as well as the action out on the field. Because the parabolic is amplifying everything that's in front of the dish and basically deflecting, because the microphone is down inside this little cave, it's basically deflecting or reflecting the sound around it, unless it's coming directly from in front. It's much more directional than a shotgun. So that's really, besides the amplification, it's the directionality that is setting it apart. But again, the amplification, as you noticed when you watched or recorded your baseball game, it's pretty impressive. Even with the little 9-inch, you pick up things that you would not pick up with a shotgun typically.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that also stood out to me was, when you think about a pitcher throwing the ball, you don't think about their breath. And that, when I lined it up on our pitcher, I was like, whoa, he is breathing weird. And then I lined it up on the next pitcher, and I was like, oh, they all do that. You've just never been that close to where you can actually hear it. You talk about the 9-inch microphone. Is that the Sound Shark?
No, or the equivalent, yes.
Okay. I got my introduction to the Sound Shark. It shoe mounts. It goes on top of my camera. It's super easy. Is that where you recommend people would start, or something somewhere else?
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to do. But for something that's relatively inexpensive, very easy to use, the Sound Shark is a real good place to start. Now, if you want to do a football game and capture the guy getting tackled on the other side of the field, the Sound Shark isn't going to cut the mustard for you. But it's great for the coach interacting with the kids on the sideline. If the ball is caught right in front of you, you'll grab that just wonderfully. But it's limited. The larger the diameter, the more amplification you're going to get. So it really depends on what you're trying to capture.
Excellent.
But just to clarify, our first product was the big one, it's 26-inch units that you see on the sidelines. And the very first time we delivered one of those units to Fox was at the MLB All-Star game in Kansas City. And if you're a baseball fan, you know that Kansas City has the waterfalls in the outfield. From 40 feet behind home plate against the backstop, they were picking up the waterfalls. And, the audio guy was going, what is this white noise that I'm picking up? And, it took us a little while, even the professional audio people, to figure out that it was the waterfalls from the outfield. So we came up with a 16-inch version. It's about half the amplification, give or take. And it's very popular for baseball. The New York Mets actually have 11 of those scattered around their ballpark in New York City. So instead of having operators in the outfield, pointing a big parabolic where the ball goes, they have 8 of them along the vertical beams holding up the stadium and along the outfield, and they just turn up whichever microphone is close. If it's left field, you turn on that mic. If it's right field, you turn up that mic. They love it. They think it's great. We sold quite a few of those to baseball in the last few years, but they also do work for football, especially like high school. I've done high school football games with a 16-inch. It's just that, again, if the play is on the opposite side of the field, you're going to have much less audio than a big one. And then we went to NAB. We were talking about the thrill of NAB and the Las Vegas Strip and all that. One of our trade shows, I think it was, one of our first trade shows, we had this engineer audio guy come up and says, I do reality TV, and every time I bring out a boom pole, people act totally different. They totally ignore the camera after, a half hour or so. But you bring out the boom pole and they just can't ignore it because it's, 3 foot above their head or whatever. How small of the, could you make? And that's what led to the 9-inch. So we have a broadcast version of the Sound Shark, which we call the Klover Mic 9. And again, it's used a little bit in sports. There's a guy up in Canada that uses it for Major League Soccer. He just mounts it right into the camera lens, the big box lens. There's a guy that uses it for basketball, rather. It's been at March Madness and the NBA playoffs and so forth. But I started, asking people about, would you take a look at this and see what you think? And there was a guy from Chicago by the, well, I guess I won't give his name right now, but don't want to give him free advertising. He said, you really need to make a more user-friendly version of this, something that's, got more of a palatable logo. It's our broadcast stuff. It doesn't have to sit on a store shelf and grab people's attention. They're going to come to us. But if, we need to make a consumer version of this, is what he was saying. So that's where the Sound Shark came from. They're functionally equivalent, except for the way that the microphone mounts. As you're aware, Tom, if you take a Sound Shark and drop it from 5 feet onto the ground, it will survive, but your little microphone is going to pop out of the focus point. With the broadcast version, it won't. It's really clamped solid in there, and once you put it in position, they can throw it in the back of the news truck, and it's still going to be there.
Gotcha. And the Sound Shark, I can't say enough about how simple it is to use. I mean, it works just like a microphone. You plug in an XLR cable and it rock and roll. And I literally, I've grown up around sports. I've grown up around audio. I've done radio for years. When I put my headphones on the first time with the Sound Shark on a camera, I was blown away because, we talk about what it does pick up, but what we haven't talked about is what it doesn't pick up. And if you have been to a high school sporting event, or really any sporting event, the people around you sometimes are just obnoxious. And with a Sound Shark on there, it's like you're there by yourself. It's almost distracting how good the sound has been. And I think in my initial review of it, I said it made me like I kept wanting the camera to zoom more because I felt like the sound was so good that it didn't match what my camera was giving me. Like I wanted my camera to do about 10 more yards, and then I would have been like, okay, well that makes perfect sense. Well,
on the other hand, if you have a long lens and you're zoomed way out there, and your shotgun is picking up all the noise that's beside you or 10 feet in front of you, your head goes, hey, there's something not right here. And that's, again, where focusing in on what you're seeing really makes a big difference.
Teaching to the test pattern.
Paul said something in there that I'd never heard of or thought of before. It's called a shotgun microphone, not a rifle microphone. With a shotgun, there's a spray, there's a pickup pattern that's wide. There's, if you shoot a shotgun, you're going to shoot, depending on what you're shooting, you're going to shoot an area instead of a pinpoint, whereas with a rifle, it's a pinpoint. So I'd never thought of that before as I was working through this conversation with Paul from Klover Products. Again, like I said before the show, I own a Sound Shark, and I probably use it more than I should, but I don't use it enough. And you'll hear about that in episode 3, where we come up with some different ideas for different ways to use a parabolic microphone that I'd never thought of. Speaking of things you never thought of, there are probably a lot of things you'll never think of when you're building out your video program. Amatrace has thought of them. AMITRACE.com. Give them a look today. See, I didn't say call. I said look. Give them a look. AMITRACE.com. They're going to think of things you never would have thought of, and they've worked with government entities and all kinds of corporations in their 30 years in business. They're going to take care of you. AMITRACE.com. That's Amatrace. I'm Tom White. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Have a great day, and as always, go make some awesome.
Teaching to the test pattern.